We have massive Leafs news today as Elliotte Friedman dropped a bomb highlighting that the Maple Leafs could be close to a trade and that they are going to be actively pursuing a defenseman very, very soon. So we're going to break that down in this episode of Leafs Digest, as well as what suitors Friedman revealed that the Leafs will be targeting and that a trade could be inevitable. So stay tuned for all that on this episode. But before we get into that, we notice a large percentage of you guys who are watching are not subscribed. So if you are not subscribed, go down and check and hit that button, as we are posting 1 to 2 Leafs videos every day, and we have you covered with the latest news. There's no better place to be, so go do that as we are on the road to 4,500 subs. All right, no more wasting time. Let's get right into it. We have tons of stuff to get into today. Before we do, the Leafs obviously had a very, very big win against the Lightning yesterday. I made a game reaction. You can check that out after this video if you want. But this is about a big trade that is brewing for the Maple Leafs, and it came from Elliotte Friedman, as this tweet and rumor surfaced saying Elliotte Friedman believes the Leafs will make a push for Flames, Nikita Zadorov, and Chris Tanev. Now, if you've been watching my videos, I've made a few videos on Zadorov. I have not on Tanev, but this is something that is very, very big because Elliotte Friedman is finally, a big name reporter that dropped this news. Now, I'll give you the exact quote from a podcast that he was on. He said, "Look, I think they're looking for a defenseman. I think they've been looking for a defenseman again after they traded for the guys last year. I think they've been looking for the defenseman all summer. They just haven't found the mix. The one I can see is Nikita Zadorov. I'll bet you this, if they can find a way to get him and Chris Tanev, I bet you they're going to do it. I bet they do both of them if Calgary is willing. I'm not going to say it's going to happen, but if you show me a path where that could occur, I could see it. This is huge. So we've been talking all this time about making a trade with the Leafs. I've made several videos about making a trade with the Leafs. You obviously have Hanifin, who could be a potential fit in the defense. Zadorov, who's a phenomenal fit. We've discussed, and I'll discuss him some more. And now you have Chris Tanev, who could be a part of a package for Zadorov in a big trade with the Leafs. Now, this would be a blockbuster trade. Obviously, you're getting two very, very solid defensemen. Nikita's a lot better than, obviously, Tanev, but this is very, very interesting. We obviously know that the Flames are open to making trades. They're open to making big moves. They are going to be sellers. They want to retool. They're not going to sell their entire team to be worse, but they're going to retool and try to figure out something, to work a little bit better and to fit better. But this is a big, big, bomb. I did not expect, for one, Elliotte Friedman linked the Flames, Nikita Zadorov, and Chris Tanev. But both of them together is something that I could have never really thought of, but it does make sense. You would really be shoring up your depth if you acquire both of them. We obviously have Jake McCabe, who's injured. Hopefully he's returning soon. We have Timothy Liljegren, who's not going to be returning anytime soon. And we all know that the Leafs' defensive issues have been the forefront of the problems. We've been beating the bush over and over again. And if you read the bottom, part as well, this just kind of highlights the rumors, the speculation, the report a little bit more. He was on the podcast, and Friedman speculated in the state of the Leafs' back end and brought up a couple of trade targets. Obviously, Brad Treliving came to Toronto from the Flames, so it makes total sense. There's mutual connection. Obviously, Brad Treliving used to work and was the GM for the Flames, and the Flames are selling. They should be able to work something out if that's going to happen. And we all know how bad the Flames have been. Okay, so if you're unfamiliar with Chris Tanev, I'm sure most of you guys know who he is, but he's 33. He's someone the Leafs have been linked to forever. It feels like he's 6'2". He's like a grit guy, similar to Zadorov in some ways. They're both defensive-minded. Zadorov a little bit, more effective on the offensive end, a little bit better on defense. He has a $4.5 million contract. And again, here's the big thing. If you're looking at making a trade for one of these guys, or both of them in this case, I don't foresee a scenario where the Leafs can afford to bring these two in without shedding someone like John Klingberg, and that's a problem for Brad Treliving to solve. So, quickly before we continue the video, I'm curious to see if you guys would be willing to trade John Klingberg, the guy we just acquired this past offseason, for Zadorov and Chris Tanev, or would you rather just go for one of them and keep Klingberg? Some people used to think that we were going to trade Timothy Liljegren for one of these guys, but now if we're shifting over to Klingberg, who's obviously a more offensive-minded defenseman, he's very, very bad. He's had a very, very bad start on the defensive side of things. He's been historically in his career bad at defense. Even though he is a defenseman, you would be completely switching up your angle here if you trade Klingberg and you bring in Zadorov and Chris Tanev, because then you're bringing in two guys who are fully defensive-minded, fully bought into the scheme. And we're looking at Tanev here. Obviously, he's played with the Calgary Flames since 2020. He's not a guy who's going to put up a lot of points, but he's a guy who's going to be a grit guy. He's going to, hit for you. He's going to be fairly big. He's a strong, gritty guy. And he's a guy who I would not mind the Leafs to acquire in a trade. But again, the biggest question is what it would cost and what the, cost would be. Because to get two guys like this, like I keep saying over and over again, the Calgary Flames are not going to be trading for prospects most likely. Maybe they'll take a prospect in who knows, Nick Robertson had a great game, so maybe you take him out of, contract discussions or trade discussions, sorry. But if you're bringing in Chris Tanev and Zadorov, then you're in an interesting spot where you're going to have to give up someone of a lot of value, maybe a pick or two, depending. Ideally, the Leafs would most likely want to do a prospect and then a pick or two for these guys so they can keep their core intact. But if they have to give up John Klingberg, and the Flames calling are saying the only way we get this trade done for both of them is if you trade us John Klingberg, which would kind of work out for the Flames as they want to, again, switch things up rather than fully rebuild. And Klingberg could help doing that. He's still a very, very solid player. He's just not really what the Leafs need right now. But I'm not sure if the Leafs are going to want to retool that early with John Klingberg. Obviously, it is a bad defensive start to the season, but maybe he could turn it around, albeit he has historically, been a very bad defender at the defensive end. But I don't know if Brad Treliving is going to bite the bullet that early and trade away John Klingberg after just making the move for him a year prior. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but if they are in desperation mode, if Brad Treliving is in desperation mode and they want to really change things up and acquire Tanev, it could be something that's interesting. And we know about Zadorov here. I've discussed him in many, many videos. He's 6'6". He's 28 years old. He's very, very solid defensively. He can put up some points as well, similar to Tanev in the points department, but he's much younger than Tanev. He's 5 years younger than Chris Tanev, so he would be a guy you'd like to have for a while, whereas Tanev you'd probably just be a rental situation now. He's going into his last year of the contract at $4.5 million, and then you also have to look at the cap hit and all the things like that, but there's a lot to discuss, and it's just very, very interesting to see the Leafs linked to this so many times. We all know the saying, when there's smoke, there's fire, and this is finally the first bit of real fire, I would say, that highlights that a trade could be coming sooner than later. With the Timothy Liljegren injury, with the way Jake McCabe has been rehabbing a bit slower than expected, I would not be surprised if the Leafs go ahead and make a trade for one or both of these guys very, very soon. But the thing is, if you trade right now before the deadline, you would presume that they'll probably have to pay a good bit, because if I'm the Flames, it depends how fast they want to switch up their lineup construction. Because if they want to wait to the trade deadline, they could probably, in theory, get a better package. But if they have someone from the Leafs that they really, really want to start working into their team early in the season, obviously we're only 10 or 11 games in, and the Flames are not very good at all right now, and they want to bring in a guy like John Klingberg, or at least just change things up sooner than the trade deadline, because if you wait to the trade deadline, if you're the Flames and you keep spiraling out of control, it might be too late. This is not a situation where the Flames want to completely rebuild, at least not as of right now. So if they want to retool, make a trade with the Leafs for someone or some guys who can help them and maybe a pick, then doing it sooner than later makes sense for both sides, because if I'm the Leafs, I absolutely want to make the trade sooner than later so we can continue to win, continue to develop, and most importantly, get the guys used to the rest of the team and the rest of the core. So I don't know. It's going to be an interesting sight to see if you are the Maple Leafs. I hope that they'll be able to pull off a trade sooner than later, and if they aren't, then I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. And hopefully it happens before the deadline. But that'll wrap up the video. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the subscribe button. We post 1 or 2 videos a day. Thank you guys for watching. And let me know in the comment section below, would you make a trade for both of these guys?